Welcome back, everybody, to Freelance Teacher Podcast. And I wanted to talk to you guys about, and it's bright here. We are buried in snow, and we have, I think it's 17 degrees out as well, so that's why I got to put on the shades. I'd like to talk about a couple of things in the today. One of the main ones is, and maybe it's the only thing that I'll get to today, is when people are wrong, and to whom do you listen? Now, what I mean by that is what's going around recently. It was on Zero Hedge. It was all over Twitter. And there was an interview with Adam Carolla, and he was on Sean Hannity's show on Fox. And what would have otherwise been a nondescript interview, your garden variety Fox interview. I like Carolla a lot. Hannity, I think, is made out of plastic, but that's another discussion. But what Adam Carolla was talking about was the so-called war on misinformation and disinformation. And he pointed out something that is so obvious that it's strange that anybody even has to mention it. But what he was talking about was how the establishment, the man, as he puts it, has been wrong about everything. And he's right. Carolla is 100% correct. They've been wrong about everything through this novel coronavirus era, the pandemic that we've been through. They've been wrong about everything, all the time. It's difficult to come up with something that they were right about. So, here's the thing. Carolla brought up a great point where he talks about how the establishment, the man, has been wrong about everything from masks to social distancing to lockdowns. I don't think he mentioned that they were wrong about surfaces, right? Remember when you were spraying down your groceries and spraying every table with Lysol and Windex and, spraying hand sanitizer on yourself and everybody else and all kinds of stuff. I mean, wrong about that. Wrong about everything. And he brought it up because of this laughably okay boomer fiasco with Spotify hosting Joe Rogan. And Rogan has a fantastic episode with Dr. Malone. I think, Dr. Robert Malone. It's very good. I listened to the entire thing. And it's really, really good. And so Neil Young, who was one of these kind of fighting the man rock stars of the 60s and the 70s, said to Spotify, you can't have me and Joe Rogan on Spotify. You're going to have to choose. And the irony in this is so rich, it's not even funny, because Neil Young at one point was a rock star who fought against the man. And this is what Carolla pointed out, just in genius fashion, in that somebody like Neil Young is supposed to know instinctively, intuitively, that Joe Rogan is not the man. Fauci is the man. The CDC is the man. Pfizer is the man. The American federal bloated government corporocracy is the man. And Neil Young, okay boomer, is fighting against the guy who is going up against the man. And it's just laughable. And it really shows you how easy it is. And it's to warp minds. Like you'd think somebody like Neil Young, who has more, what's his net worth, $200 million, would have the ability and the time to, get multiple sides of a story. Instead, he becomes a vaccine shill, a vacation salesman, like Donald Trump has become, and just shilling for and pushing money into the coffers of Big Pharma. And then Joni Mitchell comes in, and Carolla didn't talk about this, but it was hysterical to watch. Joni Mitchell, who gave up her only daughter for adoption because she wasn't ready at the time. So she had a daughter and didn't see this woman for 25 years, gave up her one daughter. Joni Mitchell, waddles into the fray, smelling of cat pee, dried ovaries, barren spinster, and says, yeah, I'm with Neil Young. I don't want to be on a platform that peddles misinformation and disinformation on vaccines and costs people lives. I mean, I really don't like the generational blame game thing. It bothers me because it's kind of ridiculous when you think about it, like the boomers. But man, and my mom's a boomer, right? Her husband's a boomer, but they're the, and yeah, maybe I'm biased here, but they're at least admirable, middle of the road, mid-left, honorable leftists, where they don't shill for large pharmaceutical corporations, nor are they sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars. But my point is, who are you listening to? Think about that. Joni Mitchell's net worth is $100 million. Neil Young's is around $200 million. Who are these people listening to that they go in and make fools of themselves, pushing up against Joe Rogan and Spotify because he has Dr. Robert Malone, who knows more about vaccines and epidemiology and virology than Joni Mitchell and Neil Young could ever possibly know. And yet they embarrass themselves. And the news was all over the place. It was on Zero Hedge, which has a monstrous amount of traffic. And they either are on the take, or they're ignorant, or honestly, maybe they just watch CNN and MSNBC and listen to NPR, read the New York Times and the New Yorker, and that's their world. That's probably the case. There's this somewhat conspiratorial theory because they looked up who owns Neil Young's music, and it's some big BlackRock conglomerate, right? I think he sold half of his collection to, I want to say it was Hypnotic, or has a weird name, Hypnotic Music, and the large shareholder, or one of the guys who sits on the board, is a former BlackRock guy. I don't know if any of that's true. So what, Neil Young is the boot on the throat and he's got a shill for Pfizer? I don't know if any of that's true. I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's the case of they are in a bubble, and what they see on the news, ABC, NBC, CBS, maybe CNN, I don't even know. They probably get the New York Times delivered to their house, right? Mateo Gonzalez probably walks the paper up to them at the table after serving them their avocado toast in the morning. And they're like, hey, this crazy Joe Rogan guy, and he has this ridiculous Dr. Malone, that's misinformation, and I'm going to yell about it. And wait, he's on Spotify? And I'll end with this, because I always explain to you that it's the reaction that is something you want to watch. The reaction of Spotify so far is they said, okay, Neil Young, you're out. I don't know if Joni Mitchell's music has been pulled from Spotify yet, but the reaction was interesting, because I think a year and a half ago, maybe, I'm not sure, a year ago, Spotify might have issued an apology. They might have told Joe Rogan to shut his mouth. I'm not sure how this would have gone. But without much of a blip, Spotify told Neil Young, all right, we paid Joe Rogan $100 million to come onto the platform. You're out. And so Glenn Greenwald has a good article on this that came out today, and we'll see, because the screaming Harridans and Harpies and Karens and vax weirdos simply cannot be allowed. They never lose, right? Because they have corporations on their side. So we'll see how this goes. But as of now, it's eye-opening to think that you have people in stations in their lives, like established musicians. I mean, my mom had Joni Mitchell records. I grew up with a two record set, I think, of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young album, live album, huge album, 2 or 4 records. Yeah, records on a record player. Like, I grew up with that stuff. And so now you have these people, and they're shouting from the mountaintop about misinformation and disinformation. And my message to you is, as it always is, it's important that you have a diverse set of sources of news and information. And I'll tell you why real quick. And it's because the corporations, the corporate media, the story you get from them is at best not the story. And it's usually, and I mean this with all seriousness, the opposite of the truth, 180-degree opposite of the truth. So when they tell you that it's a pandemic of the unvacationed, the people who haven't gotten the bug juice, it seems to be, with great evidence, especially in Israel, the exact opposite. When they tell you that masks are effective, it turns out to be the exact opposite. When they're telling you that there's a pandemic, I think eventually truth will get out that it was the opposite. And I know that sounds crazy, and people are probably wondering who, where, wait, hold on a minute, what? We'll see, right? Stuff is coming out, and the narrative is changing, and that reaction is something that you need to pay attention to, in the sense that England, Czech Republic, Denmark, Texas, Florida, Mexico have all gotten rid of their COVID restrictions. So the narrative is changing. And with the diverse media sources, you don't have to wait. You don't have to react to the narrative. You don't need to be afraid right away when they come out screaming about the latest thing that they tell you to be afraid of. If you have a diverse source of informational intake, diverse sources, you get it already. The old adage that knowledge is power, that's true. That's not some kind of just odd saying that your grandma tells you. That knowledge is power stuff is real. And the truth will set you free. So if you keep those things in mind, you can navigate better and have a more abundant life. And that's really the message of today. Thank you.